View on Q show for 2025. And we continue to engage with our local, regional, and global Q family listeners and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. My co-host is Justice Dr. Irving Andre. Our guests are former Dominica UN Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, social scientist Simeon Joseph, who will be joining us a little bit later. Attorney Gabriel Christian also will be joining us in a bit. And former CSA General Secretary Alvin Thomas. We will engage in a no-holds-barred review of lessons to be learned from the recent St. Vincent and the Grenadines general election and ask, where do we in Dominica go from here amid missed opportunities for Dominicans in agriculture, in agribusiness, in manufacturing, tourism, foreign relations, modern healthcare, state-of-the-art education, and other fields in preparation for this era of knowledge industries. So here are some talking points, issues, and questions. Have Vincentian voters struck a blow to leadership of entitlement? Have they rejected dynastic democracy in their country? Have they demonstrated that power lies in the people rather than in their leaders? Has St. Vincent and the Grenadines set the tone for conducting truly free and fair elections? Has St. Vincent become a beacon for its island neighbors like Dominica? Have the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines demonstrated that after a regime has been in office for 25 years, it is time to make a change no matter what? Are we bearing witness to the rise and fall of tin pot dictatorships in the Eastern Caribbean, where plans for personal enrichment are paramount? As I always say, thinking forward towards 2028 or to Dominica's 50th anniversary of independence, what are the people's expectations for their own well-being? Are they satisfied with their current conditions and lack of economic and social progress? What are they doing about that? We look forward to the suggestions of our panel, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, former Dominica UN Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, social scientist Simeon Joseph, Attorney Gabriel Christian, former CSA General Secretary Alvin Thomas, and our listeners, callers, and viewers on Facebook and on YouTube on our no-holds-barred review of lessons to be learned from the recent St. Vincent and the Grenadines general election, as we ask, where do we in Dominica go from here amid all these missed opportunities for Dominicans in agriculture, in agribusiness, in manufacturing, tourism, foreign relations, modern healthcare, state-of-the-art education, and in other fields in preparation for this era of knowledge industry. So as usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to give our usual huge shout out and big thank you to our farmers, our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, public and private sector patriots, and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. And as I always say, we welcome each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air, and thank you, Lambi, on the console directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q and on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program, and Lambi will signal us when you call. My co-host and guest panelists will expand and deliver on their ideas. So I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his opening comments on our topic tonight. Let's get the ball rolling, Dr. Andre.
Yes, good evening to you. Good evening to the esteemed panelists. Good evening to your listeners. Good evening to all those who have taken the time off to listen to persons who are giving their own views as to what plagues Dominica as we speak. Let me start by saying that one of the obvious scourges that we as a society in Dominica we have to contend with is intoxication on account of the consumption of alcohol. You may ask, and you will soon find out, what is the link between that phenomenon to what we are talking about? Well, give me a minute. Let me try to explain. Intoxication or alcoholism has wreaked significant damage to Dominica. It has helped destroy families. It has caused accidents that many of which result in death. It has increased the cost of health services in Dominica. It has destroyed families. It has destroyed the productive capacity of many persons, because in all too many respects, this malady goes untreated. But there is a more insidious intoxication that plagues Dominica that we don't talk about enough. It's intoxication on account of the obsession for power. It's a malady that afflicts not only Dominica, but many parts of the world, including the Caribbean. And the latest evidence of that lies in the fate of Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, 75 years old. Someone who at that age would perhaps be looking to retire with dignity, looking to play the role of the elder statesman, being called upon to share his encyclopedic knowledge of law and governance in all universities, various groups, islands, being not adored, but being praised for his work in governance. And yet, after 25 years, enough is not enough. He still craves power. He still craves the craven attraction to persons seeking favors, the spoils of office, the glorification, the sanctification of leadership in Dominica, the belief that you are invincible, politically speaking, the belief that the island's future is inextricably tied with you and you alone. And so we witnessed, unfortunately, well, fortunately, quite frankly, the death of a political dynasty in many respects. Because the Prime Minister had openly declared more than once, as far as I recall, or had certainly betrayed his intention to ensure a smooth transition from himself to his son and continue the legacy. Needless to say, no island belongs to any political leader. No island is a kingdom of any political leader. And so we can look back and see the demise of Ralph Gonsalves as a good thing. Because after all, here's someone who had embraced and espoused progressive politics for over 50 years. You may recall, Mr. G, in 2000, when David Granger, the president of Guyana, refused to concede defeat after the general elections. It took them 5 months to declare the results. The case wound its way to the CCJ. And one Caribbean leader who publicly said this is nonsense, we have to accept the results of an election, was guess who? The very same Ralph Gonsalves, who clung tenaciously to power, undeterred by the creeping effects of old age, of the, well, I shouldn't say that, but of the slow pace, or the slow pace of the brain as age catches up to it. But not only that, you may recall on about 2015 in St. Kitts, a fellow called Denzel Douglas, another Labourite. Yet again, he refused to concede defeat. Yet again, it was Gonsalves who called on him to accept the results of the elections. And it is this very same Ralph Gonsalves who didn't know when to quit. It's like a boxer past his prime, still believing that his skills are eternal, that he's a gift from God to the Vincentian, or should I say the Dominican people. Think also another so-called socialist, not in the Eastern Caribbean, but very close, Latin America. Think of Daniel Ortega in, where is he? Nicaragua. He's 80 years old. he is still clinging to power as if he was handcuffed to it. He is jailing his opponents. He is seeking to deport citizens of Nicaragua who oppose him because they cannot sever themselves from the unjust enrichment that comes with absolute power. And we know that phenomenon well in Dominica because we are bearing witness to it. We see it. It is manifested in so many different ways. Just think of it. Ask yourself, which Dominican leader in its history has decided that the gifting of the assets of the state, i.e. its passports in particular, and using the net proceeds of sale of these passports, as Zampoli told us years ago, and hiding it in mysterious accounts all over Europe and elsewhere. Which political leader had the audacity or the brazen nature to treat the assets of the state as if it's part of a share buried in someone's backyard? What about the obscene rent, $65,000 a month? NEP workers are getting $1,000 a month to support a lifestyle. Lavish is not the right word. It's called a regal lifestyle. What about the recent disclosure of the $92,000 vehicle? To drive where? To drive who? Tutulu crabs? What about a few months ago, the disclosure of a vehicle purchase for over $160,000 to take your children to school? How can you justify that extravagance except to say that you are addicted and you are intoxicated to power, naked power, irrespective of how vulgar it has become, how insidious it has become, how oppressive it has become? Another symptom of this intoxication by power is the impoverishment of local citizens. Local citizens, except cronies, obviously. And let me digress. So some time ago, I heard a police officer, can you imagine this? A senior police officer, retired, who was talking about leave the black boy alone. The black boy was given the proceeds of sale of Dominican passports to build a hotel. And this black boy, as was described, I didn't describe him in that way, said that that hotel, which was built by monies that should have been deposited into the consolidated fund, he owns 99.9% of it. And there are people on the radio calling and saying, this is a hard-working guy. How can you allow and justify thievery, blatantly, the use of the sales of Dominican passport to build a hotel, and then it no longer becomes the property of the state? It falls into private hands. That is an indication that we have with us, untreated, intoxication by power. But what about the blatant victimization of our political parties? Not just starving them out of existence, but persecuting them, using and weaponizing law enforcement against them to ensure the perpetuation of power. What about the fact that we have our own mongoose gang? It appears that we have our own Tonton Macoute. That is an indication of how that type of intoxication has played a profound role in the destruction of every institution of governance in Dominica. No bid contracts. Truckers, carpenters, contractors cannot or are not being given a half-decent chance to bid on contracts in their own country. And there is not a whimper of protest. It is accepted as if it is an edict from heaven. We are witnessing, as we have never witnessed in the annals of Dominican history, an intoxication which, one can say boldly, is eating away the very inside of Dominica. We've talked about the weaponization of the local of the local law enforcement. What about industry? What about indigenous industry? Where has it gone? Where is Dump Fruit? Where is what's his name is Bello? Where is Benji? Where were the little factories we used to have? They are no more. Where is the toilet paper factory of somebody called Mackenzie? It was starved out of existence, because anything which does not belong or is not affiliated to the political directorate is sent right into the cemetery, with songs such as Abide With Me, Fast Fall the Evening Tide. And this is what we are dealing with as we speak today. We are dealing with death by our own hand, not by death by some enemy, or death by an enemy, an internal one. And hence we talk about, we lament that people are leaving the island in droves. What do you expect? What future are you giving them? We keep talking about bringing the SSS to rid the islands of guns. And yet we get evidence or news reports of flagrant and blatant killings. Young people of another, or by their own age group. And yet, despite bringing the RSS, despite glorified and meaningless initiatives of offering money for guns, or gun amnesty, the problem continues, because something is rotten in the state of Denmark. And therein lies the problem. The problem is that we are not dealing with the symptoms of intoxication by power. We are allowing it to run roughshod over all the instruments of governance in Dominica. And because we're doing that, we become the architects of our own demise, because we allow it to happen. We take help from the other cadres in the Eastern Caribbean, so that every electoral cycle, in addition to the illegal bringing or importation of Dominican voters, you have troops of advisors from Barbados. You have others from other countries coming to aid and abet that institutional theft of elections in Dominica. Just not too long ago, a few weeks ago, there was a news account how the Barbadians had cleansed their electoral lists.
1 second, please, Irvin. Crispin, could you mute your mic? Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, they had cleansed their electoral lists. Barbados, mind you. Dominica has not cleansed anything, not even the poll. And yet they are sending advisors, pollsters to Dominica to prop up the blatant illegality of an election. And we have Gonzalez, who pontificated about why they love the sale of passports so much. He said because they're thieving the money. He came to Dominica, but not one word as to where that cancer is most evident, a cancer that has metastasized and has destroyed every instrument of governance in the island. The question is, how many more persons can be bought by a regime who is so disdainful of real progress, who is so disdainful of its citizenry, who is so disdainful of law and order, who is so disdainful of institutions of governance in Dominica? But the leaders in the Eastern Caribbean, to a large extent, they have accepted it. They have accepted it They have sent the security forces ostensibly to look for guns, but they're there for one reason: to ensure that the climate in which another election, through a more insidious practice of confirmation or registration of voters, will be the weapons used to yet again try to rig elections in Dominica. The question is what we as a citizenry should do in the face of it. Should we not mobilize? Should those on the ground not come together? Should those on the ground not sacrifice every indulgence and place all their efforts to rescue their country? What about our elderly folks? What about their pensions? What about the salary increases? 1%, 2%? Ministers getting 30%, others 40%? How do you justify that? How do you justify that as a citizen of the Commonwealth of Dominica? What rationalization can you come up with to justify this? What? And you hear all kinds of blatant and craven excuses about why this should continue unabated. And many people have said we are last in everything. Is it a surprise that we are last in everything? If we allow that to continue, where do you expect us to be? And so we stand at the threshold of a new dawn in one sense. We've seen what happened in St. Vincent. Ironically, Ralph Gonsalves had a decent record as a prime minister in that country. But 25 years is too much. Enough is enough. And I had occasion to listen to some pronouncements of the prime minister after he lost office. And there was some indication allegedly that he was concerned about the continuation of his perks as prime minister. Edward LeBlanc could teach them an example. Totally free in the real sense, spiritual and moral sense, that the accoutrements of office meant nothing to him. He was satisfied to be in the area that he grew up, close to the sea, close to the land, fishing, planting, relaxing, content that no one can accuse him of helping himself to the assets of the state. Although during office he was accused of precisely that. But his life was the biggest evidence that these accusations were all false. I guess he was too old-fashioned compared to what obtains today. He was too decent. Where is the Mandela-like leader that we crave, who can walk out of office after one term, and who can be satisfied that he played his role in the liberation of his island, of his country, irrespective of the fact that he may not have been a perfect leader, but perfection doesn't exist in the land of the living. But we have an obligation to be as perfect as we come. We have an obligation to give our own brothers and sisters an opportunity for them to exceed, for them to excel, not just in education, but in manufacturing, in engineering, in AI, whatever that means. My initial is IA, as a matter of fact. So I know something about it. To excel in any field of endeavor. Markets for the farmers, markets for the fisher folk, markets for those who are industrious. Where is the focus on indigenous enterprise, indigenous talent, indigenous skills, indigenous attitudes, indigenous products? Where is that focus? And if the focus is not there, then how can we dream of a better place? How can we dream of success in its myriad ways? How can we dream of Dominica overtaking or taking its rightful place in this island community of nations they call the Eastern Caribbean or the West Indies? The answer is clear. This is not rocket science. We have to collectively come together, those of us who dream of a better Dominica, to toil with all hands. What's the part of the national song? All hands and voices. We must prosper, song the call. Are we sounding the call tonight, Mr. G? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. Yeah, certainly good opening remarks there. I'm really putting in perspective and the big picture. I mean, Crispin, you heard Dr. Andre, he talked about Granger in Guyana and the experience there. Douglas in St. Kitts, the experience with him. Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, the experience there with him as well. And then, of course, we witnessed recently the demise of the fall of Gonzalez in St. Vincent after 25 years in office. We in Dominica have a similar situation. We have one government, one regime has been in office for 25 years. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. G, and thank you very much for inviting me to this evening's Global View. A very interesting set of developments in our region, and that I'm not talking about Venezuela tonight. We might mention Venezuela, but the reality is that, Mr. G, or before I go further, let me salute my fellow panelists, Justice Dr. Andre, my colleague Alvin Thomas, and I understand we'll be joined by Gabriel Christian Esquire sometime later. And
Gabriel is there with us now.
He is. Yeah, and Mr. Simeon Joseph, and I want to salute the engineer Sherwin Norris and Lambert Charles at the controls. And to the esteemed listeners of Q95 FM radio in Dominica, good evening to all of you, both in Dominica and in the Dominica diaspora. I am really pleased to be here this evening. Mr. G, lots of developments in our region. I mean, there's so much going on in this region we call the Caribbean right now. It's on the front burner of the world right now, the Caribbean. And the Caribbean Ocean, the Caribbean Sea has so much weaponry in it that I don't even know if the sea will be there after whatever happens. Something is going to happen in our region that we'll all regret, and there will be implications going forward when that aggression in Venezuela happens. But tonight, I'm not here to talk about Venezuela so much, but to mention to you, Mr. G, that since May of 2025, and we're talking about this 6-month period, there have been 6 elections in the CARICOM. 6 countries in the CARICOM have had elections in the last 6 months. And that's very significant because of the 6, and I want to mention them, starting with Suriname in May, followed by Guyana, I believe in maybe June, then Trinidad and Tobago soon after that, Belize, St. Vincent last week, and yesterday St. Lucia. So we've had 6 elections in 6 months in 6 countries, and the result
there was also Jamaica. You left out Jamaica.
And oh yeah, and Jamaica. I'm sorry about that. And Jamaica. Thank you, Alvin. Of the so that would be 7 then. Yeah, 7 elections. And in the 3 countries we had change of governments. We had change of government in Suriname, we had change of government in Trinidad and Tobago, and we had change of government in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Mr. G, I can say comfortably that the democratic multi-party process is alive in the CARICOM region. It's one or two outliers that is not normal. And St. Vincent was one of them, and Dominica being the other, where we haven't had change of governments in 25 years. And that's a serious development in those two countries because, of course, St. Vincent it has brought to an end last week. Dominica still has to face that reality of whether it will continue with a one-party dictatorship. I don't believe that because I believe that the Dominican people are beginning to look at what's happening to them, what's happening to Dominica in terms of the democratic context, and how does that relate to the rest of CARICOM. And as I said, we've had 7 elections and free change of governments in 3 of the countries. So in a nutshell, Mr. G, the complexion of the CARICOM, the complexion of the Caribbean community has changed since in this last 6 months to a more conservative government in Trinidad and Tobago, and one that's paying attention to its location near Venezuela, and a new government in Trinidad and Tobago positioning itself towards the United States and how it's going to do that and how it's going to survive. I should point out, though, that none of these elections in these 7 countries have experienced the taints that the Caribbean Court of Justice said must be removed in Dominica for there to be free and fair elections. Not one of those countries have those taints. And yet Dominica seems to relish in maintaining the taints so that there cannot ever be a free and fair election. And Mr. G, that is what is the most frightening reality for Dominica, because what I see, and I am not a magician, unlike the Justice Andre, I don't have a crystal ball. All I can say, though, is that if Dominica does not get its act together and have a free and fair process, I worry about what the implications could be for stability in that country. That is one. The second thing that disturbs me greatly, and I don't see those things in any of the 7 countries that had elections recently, is the weaponization that Dr. Andre talked about of the police against the democratic forces. It seems to me that in Dominica, the police as an institution has failed to realize its constitutional mandate of being an institution that ensures democratic process and does not allow a situation that emerges where the police become the armed wing of a ruling party. This is totally unacceptable, and I will hold the police to account. And I am sending a clear message to the commissioner and his police. And I'm willing, Mr. G, as I am in Dominica now, to meet with the commissioner, if he will allow me an appointment, for me to say to him, in no uncertain terms, that Mr. Commissioner, the course on which the police of Dominica is on is a destructive path. And if the police cannot do their job, they should resign. The top brass of the police should resign if they can't do their job. I mean, imagine a situation, and that is an indictment of the Dominica police, where the government has to resort to the RSS to come and find guns in Dominica. That tells me that the police institution is in crisis, and their best behavior is to intimidate the opposition forces. by throwing stones at rallies, at protests, at arresting people for protesting, arresting people for walking. That is not the job of the police. The job of the police, as stated by the Constitution, and also as referenced by the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and as referenced by the norms that go with our Constitution, which says that protest is legal and totally acceptable. And what the police should be doing is, when there is a protest, give the protesters proper police protection, not to be firing tear gas at them and firing stones, as police did on the 19th of May, and going to Salisbury on the 20th of May and bursting tear gas as though Salisbury is a war field. No, this is unacceptable. And I am saying to the police of Dominica, you better be careful what you're doing. Otherwise, you will come up for war crimes and crimes against humanity. I just want the police in Dominica to understand that. And I'm willing, Mr. G, to seek an appointment with the police commissioner and tell him what is at play for them outside Dominica. I want that to be clear. Mr. G, the other thing that I have concerned is that in none of the 7 countries that just had elections in the 6 months, not one of them did I see the violent posture of the police towards citizens. And I am also going to use this opportunity tonight to put a clarion call specifically directed at the Director of Public Prosecution. Now, I may be wrong on that, but I'm still going to say it. And that is, I'm calling on the Director of Public Prosecution to end these cases against the 25 people who were arrested for the 19th of March protest in Roseau for comprehensive electoral reform, and not those laws that were passed on the 19th, which do not create a level playing field for good, free and fair elections in Dominica. Now, Mr. G, I wanted to use the opportunity tonight because my colleague, Dr. Andre, has already started speaking very eloquently on the question of St. Vincent. And that is the most topical issue in the region right now. And I think my esteemed colleagues are best suited to speak to that. They know it better. I know it, but I prefer them to talk about it. Tonight, I choose to speak about one country that is not well known in the CARICOM. That is Suriname. And if you allow me, Mr. G, I want to talk a little bit about the election of the 25th of May in Suriname, which brought a change of government. Suriname, being a Dutch country, does not come out of the British tradition of first past the post. They have a different political system than us. And what I like about Suriname, and I must say that I worked in Suriname from 2012 to 2015 as the manager of the UNDP office in Suriname. And by extension, I managed the UNDP office in Barbados, the UNDP office in Jamaica, the UNDP office in Trinidad and Tobago, the UNDP office in Guyana. I managed from New York 5 UNDP offices in the Caribbean for almost 4 years. So I'm very intimately familiar with the politics of each of these countries. And I dealt with all of their governments, both in their home countries and in New York at the UN. And I I have a particular soft spot for Suriname. I don't speak Dutch, but most Surinamese speak English, and they also speak a pidgin that is like it's close to Papiamento, but they have their own local language that they speak. And what I like about Suriname, I have to tell you, is that their government is always one of a coalition. There is no political party in Suriname that is much stronger than any other party to form a government by itself. So Suriname, the government in Suriname is always a coalition government. And secondly, there is never a winner takes all in Suriname. And that gives a balanced kind of political atmosphere. To give you an example, when I first started working in Suriname, the opposition party of the last president, then they were in opposition, the VHP, it's called the Progressive Reform Party of Suriname, referred to by the Dutch acronym VHP. They are largely East Indian, Hindu party. And as a UNDP director, they asked me to speak at their, that's an opposition party asking me to speak at their convention. And I said I can't do that because it would be seen as UN interference in the internal affairs. And they said to me, Ambassador Gregoire, wait a minute, before you say anything further, the president of Suriname will be speaking at the convention of the opposition party. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the Prime Minister of Dominica speaking at the convention of the United Workers' Party? That's unthinkable. So when the opposition party, the then opposition party, we're talking about 2013, asked me to speak at their convention. And when they told me that the president of Suriname is speaking at their convention, I said, but this is unreal. And they said, Ambassador, we want you to speak at our convention. And I said, well, if the president of Suriname speaks at the convention, then I'll speak at the convention. So I spoke at the convention. And I got a chance to get to know the man who would become president later, Mr. Chan Santoki. He's the one who lost the election in May. And what happened in May is a very interesting dynamic. And, you know, it really shows how alive the multi-party democratic process is in Suriname. That Mr. Santoki, his party won 17 seats in a parliament of 51. And the other parties, they all teamed up and formed a new coalition government in Suriname with a lady for the first time as the first woman president of Suriname. Her name is Miss Jennifer, I call her Excellency Jennifer Gerlings-Simons. She has a hyphenated last name. Simons being her married name, Gerlings being her maiden name. And she teamed up with all the other parties in the opposition, minus the 17 of the former ruling party, in a 51-seat assembly. And that is the new coalition government in Suriname. And it's important to underscore that Suriname is another rich country in South America. Just like Guyana has significant oil reserves, Venezuela with the most oil reserves, now Suriname with significant oil reserves and gas. All three of these countries, Suriname, Guyana, and Venezuela, possess the world's largest endowment of gas and oil. And I have said before on previous programs on this station that part of the reason for the aggression against Venezuela is because of the oil they have and other resources they have. But these two other countries, which are CARICOM members, Suriname and Guyana, have significant resources. And they also have significant forest cover, large endowment of forest cover. So Suriname is not a poor country by any means. The people are not rich. And I'm hoping that with all of these resources of oil and gas and gold and bauxite and all the resources they have, forest, water, fresh water, that it will make a difference for their people in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, let me ask you this, Crispin. I mean, do you see any connection between what obtained in Suriname in terms of all the political parties getting together to form a government? Do you see any sort of connection between that experience and the Dominica situation currently?
Yes, Mr. G, because, you know, what has happened is that the opposition parties have seen it critical for their own future existence to come together into a grand coalition. And I think that is what is missing in Dominica right now. That grand coalition, the reality is that no one party, not even the UWP alone, has the capability of removing a government that has been in power for 25 years. And I think that the only solution to that reality is that all the opposition parties and individual independents, because there will be independents going forward, who will form a grand coalition to put the best foot forward for a democratic outcome like what happened in Suriname. Otherwise, Mr. G, Dominica is headed for grave instability. And that is what I hope does not happen.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Let me just go to Alvin, and then I will go over to Gabriel Christian after Alvin. So, Gabriel, if you're there with us, be on standby for that. But Alvin, I imagine you've been following that St. Vincent situation. Gabriel, could you mute your mic? Yeah, there's a lot of feedback coming through your mic. Thanks a lot, Gabe. And Alvin, I'm sure you've been following this St. Vincent situation. There's a lot of noise coming through for some reason or the other. I'm not sure if it's through your mic, Alvin.
I'm not sure.
It's Gabriel's mic.
No, yeah. Gabriel's mic is muted.
It's muted.
No, it's stopped.
All right, go ahead.
It's stopped now. All right. So, but Alvin, you've witnessed what happens in St. Vincent. You've seen Gonzalez in office for 25 years. You've seen what is happening in Dominica for 25 years now. What do you make of this, and what lessons should we learn from all of this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. G. Great question. Great question. And just following through on my fellow panelists, Crispin and Irvin. But let me first of all say good evening to you as host, of course, and to my fellow panelists, and to everyone tuning both locally, regionally, and across the diaspora. And again, to say thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas on this very important conversation. Let me see if I can, maybe in as little a time that I have, put it into some perspective based on the question that you asked. And what we are here looking at tonight, or discussing rather, Mr. G, can maybe best be described to some of us as, one might say, a pivotal and historical moment, not just for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but for the Caribbean. I think what happened in St. Vincent must not be seen only through the lens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but also the wider Caribbean. And therefore, the recent concluded general election that took place on November 27, just a couple of days ago, has developed delivered what seems to be a political earthquake. There's no doubt about that. A decisive and by all accounts, a humiliating defeat for Dr. Ralph Gonsalves and his Unity Labour Party, who have ruled, as you say, for some 24 years, almost 25 years. The outcome, therefore, of the Democratic Party securing 14 of the 15 parliamentary seats under the leadership of Dr. Godwin Friday is not just a routine change in government. It's not just a routine change. In my view, it represents what one might call a complete and emphatic rejection of the old order of the Vincentian people, the old guys. That's the message it sent. It is a political landslide rarely seen in any modern democratic system, or particularly in the Caribbean. And my good friend Crispin spoke so eloquently to that when he referenced the 7 islands just in the last couple months have had elections. We all know that for about 2 decades, Ralph was not only a prime minister, he was a dominant political personality in St. Vincent and the wider Caribbean. His voice shaped policies. We know that. He influenced regional discourse. He challenged external powers and at times even polarized Caribbean politics. Just earlier this year, we all heard him lashed out at the colleagues in his colleagues on the CBI program, citing the unsustainability of the program. And guess what? Only one prime minister was bold enough to respond, that of the prime minister of Antigua and Barbuda. The others were mute. They couldn't have said a word. For many of his supporters, and in his earlier years, he was seen as a young activist, a young politician. He was seen as a revolutionary. Those of us who've done research on him, a defender of sovereignty, talking about the region and the Caribbean, and he would not sell his sovereignty, his passport. A relentless advocate for the working class. He wrote several papers and books on the labor movement in the region and in St. Vincent. However, in recent times, his critics saw him as someone who symbolized arrogance of power, political overstay, intolerance of dissent, and a growing disconnect from the reality facing ordinary Vincentian. We all knew what happened during COVID, the action that his government took against public officers, against police officers who chose not to take the vaccine. Many of us, therefore, will agree that what makes this defeat so profound in the scale of the rejection was 3 things. 1, this was not a close election. Contrary to what people might think, it was not a close election. 2, this was not a marginal shift. And 3, this was not simply voter fatigue. This was a message loud, unmistakable, and irreversible. It was a message from the farmers, the fisher folks, the teachers, the business community, the young people, the unemployed, the church, the ordinary man and woman, the diaspora and civil society, all saying clearly that the country requires new leadership, new thinking, new respect for its people, and a new social contract. That was the message that was being sent. The elections tells us, therefore, that power, no matter how entrenched, it is never permanent in a democracy. And therefore, these are the questions that will define the next chapter of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the rest of the Caribbean. So I am saying so tonight, Mr. G, that I have hope. I'm not despairing. I am not despairing, because when the people decide to rise up and take the power back in their hands, it happens. So therefore, tonight, as we examine this moment, and we do so with a certain level of honesty and maturity, we must keep in our minds as well that Dr. Gonsalves' legacy, both controversial and consequential as it might be, and it's going to be debated for a long time. Mark my words. This is not going to be a one-time debate. It's going to continue at universities, in political parties, in forums for generation. But what we have all seen, and I believe we all will learn, is that the people have delivered their verdict. And in a democracy, the people's voice remains supreme. What happened, therefore, on November 27 was not just a political defeat. It was a reassertion of democracy. It was the reclaiming of power by the people. It was a reminder that no leader, and I repeat again, no leader, no matter how powerful, is greater than the will of the electorate. And so as a region, there are powerful lessons to learn from that. For those listening tonight, that one, for governments that have grown complacent, no matter what they might say to you, no matter what face they try to put. Two, for opposition parties that feel hopeless. That's the message. For opposition party that feels hopeless, there is hope. For citizens who believe their vote makes no difference, because you hear that sometimes. Oh, what's the sense of voting? Why do I vote? My vote doesn't really count. It's okay, I don't have to vote. For citizens who believe their vote makes no difference. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has shown us that change is always possible. I'll repeat that. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has shown us that change is always possible. So, Mr. G, I'm just going to end here by saying, let us reflect not just on the defeat of this one man and one party, which is part of the conversation, but on the strength, maturity, and courage of a small nation that has once again proven that democracy, when exercised, still works. And that is why I'm hopeful. When democracy exercised, it still works. And therefore, it is my hope that in spite of all the concerns, all the challenges that we face in Dominica, when democracy is exercised, it still works. And the people will have the final say.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for those remarks, Alvin. I mean, to really put this St. Vincent experience into perspective. I want to go over to Gabe, if Gabe is with us. Gabe, if you're present, you can show yourself. Okay, so looks like we lost Gabe there for a moment, but I guess he will log back in a minute. But I mean, just to go over some of the things that Alvin pointed out, I mean, certainly there are lessons, there's serious lessons to be learned by Dominica from the St. Vincent experience. And certainly I think Dominica should be listening and paying close attention to the result of that election. In fact, to see how that campaign was conducted, right, by the opposition, and to see how the opposition forces, I mean, how they galvanize the various key sectors to rally with them. So, in fact, there's some really serious lessons to be learned there from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. If you're hearing us, Gabe, I mean, if you can unmute your mic so we can hear you. Are you hearing us, Gabe? All right, but in case you're hearing, let me just say what I wanted you to address, if you could, when you come on. First of all, these questions that I raised from the beginning, I want to just put them back on the table, so maybe you can address them if you're able to come in. Have Vincentian voters struck a blow to leadership of entitlement? Have they rejected dynastic democracy in their country? Have they demonstrated that true power lies in the people rather than in their leaders? And has St. Vincent and the Grenadines set the tone for conducting truly free and fair elections? Has St. Vincent become a beacon for its island neighbors like Dominica? have the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines demonstrated that after a regime has been in office for 25 years, it is time to make a change no matter what? And in fact, are we bearing witness to the rise and fall of tin pot dictatorships in the Eastern Caribbean, where plans for personal enrichment are paramount? Gabe, I don't know if you're hearing us. If you are, you can speak. Otherwise, I'll go to Dr. Andre to address those concerns until you are able to come in. So you have a call, Lambi? You have a call? Take the call.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. All due respect to the gentleman on the panel, all due respect. But Dominica is not, I repeat, a democratic country. Tell me something. How many RSS soldiers, police, or whatever they call themselves, were in St. Vincent or in St. Lucia? How many? Were there any of them there? No. But Dominica having an election, and then you have this so-called Tonton Marco guys coming to Dominica, they tear gas and the rubber bullets shooting our people. We do not have democracy in Dominica. Skerrit will not be removed by the ballot. I will put money on that. There's only one way to get rid of Skerrit. I leave it to you guys. Thank you.
Yep, and thanks a lot for your comments. Dr. Andre, I mean, I don't know whether you'd like to address some of the questions that I put on the table. You're muted.
Oh, absolutely. What is interesting and what is giving hope to what happened in St. Vincent is that Gonzalez could claim some real achievements in St. Vincent. He could claim that he certainly improved the economy. He can claim that he had a number of populist measures and so on. So he can claim that at least insofar as the endemic corruption we have in islands, some islands, where the sales of passports are creating fabulously rich people. In fact, no less a critic than Ralph Gonzalez himself told us that they love the sales of passport because they're thieving the money. And we know what he was talking about, and he knew what he was talking about. But despite those utterances, he never had the audacity or the courage to say this leader in Dominica is on the wrong path. On the contrary, they joined forces in sending the RRS to Dominica. And your last call is correct. Nobody's claiming that Dominica is a properly functioning democracy. On the contrary, every indication is that everything is being done to obliterate the institutions of democracy in Dominica. You name it. It's the new morality. And to hear someone who's just built a hotel says, but although I criticize him, he still gave me an opportunity. Yes, he did. But ask why. Because you have sold your soul for a mess of pottage. You have sold your morals. You've been bought hook, line, and sinker. Therein lies the problem. This cancer of intoxication by power, like termites, is eating away the body politic of Dominica as we speak. Persons who hitherto clung to a degree of morality, decency, are selling all that to get a few dollars more. And is that something to boast about? No. A decent, law-abiding persons would hang their head in shame. But this is the new morality that we have in Dominica. So, of course, St. Vincent is a beacon of hope for those of us in the Eastern Caribbean. Because they've basically said unequivocally that they stand for something. they will not countenance the erosion of their democracy by a leader who professes to be a messianic leader, who believes he's God's gift to his country, who believe that democracy should be reinvigorated. It should be reborn with new ideas after a certain period of time when one person is in power. So they have seized upon that. And they have said salvation will not come from some eternal being up there, but salvation will come for those who help themselves. Those who have that vision of their country, striving forward, reinvigorated with new blood, with new ideas, with new vision, with new energy. And we hope that somehow Dominicans have been inspired by that. You remember the pictures before the elections? Many St. Lucians, dozens of them lined up outside the office of the incumbent, waiting for their little handful of money, waiting for their vouchers. So this elections was a negation of that situation where leaders believe they can buy their way. Leaders believe that they can get their little buddies to go around Grand Bay, to go at a gas station offering to buy gas for people in exchange, of course, for their support. St. Lucia has, St. Vincent's has repudiated this gangster style of politics. And they've done it for one fundamental reason. They want a better future for their island. Do Dominicans want a better future for their island? Thank you.
Good, but that's okay.
Yeah, right. Hold on, Gabe. Thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. I was just having a chat with Gabe. He's been trying to log in, but he was having difficulty. So, Gabe, I don't know whether you might be able to call me on the phone and speak on the phone. And let me just put you through. Yes, Gabe. I was saying if you're able to speak on the phone right now, I can just patch you through.
Good evening, Sheridan and Brother Irving and Brother Crispin and Brother Alvin and Brother Sherman, or Brother Lambie rather at Master Control. I'll be brief and I endorse everything that's been said. I want to really encourage Brother Crispin, who is the elder statesman among us as an ambassador, who has a great diplomatic nuance, to carry through with his meeting with the Commissioner of Police. Because the police officers have to understand that there will come a time that Roosevelt Skerritt and his regime will be no more. And then what shall be their legacy? Shall their legacy be one of law and order, of protecting the Constitution? Or would it be that they tied themselves to the mast of a sinking ship, a ship where the captain said, no law, no constitution, can prevent me from doing what I want to do with regard to an election in which he knew that he was ineligible to run for office because he was a French citizen. And so, Brother Crispin, I think it's very wise. We always have to be of sober orientation. We have to be able to speak to people. See, we have to perish the idea that in Dominica, we have come to a place where a government can declare that you're an enemy of the state and send police behind you, penalize you, file bogus charges. And maybe while you're at it, you may want to speak to the young lady who is the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, because that's another office that's been weaponized against the people with a bunch of bogus charges. And it's indeed fitting and proper, Ambassador Gregoire, that you also ask for the charges against the Wednesday walkers, people like Atherton Martin and the other senior citizens, who are charged because they walked in the streets of Dominica, streets that should belong to all of us. regardless of whatever our views may be on political preference. And I want to thank you, and Alvin and Irving, for really raising the banner high of democracy and civic engagement. Irving is a sitting judge. Alvin runs a spectacles factory. Ambassador Crispin Gregoire is a gentleman farmer. As for you, Sheridan, I know that you're a former textile manufacturing magnate, now semi-retired, but all of you have come out of retirement, or at least you've set some time aside for the country we love. And we want to appeal to all our brothers and sisters in the Dominica Labour, well, in the party now in power. I was going to say Dominica Labour Party, but I told of you that there's no Dominica Labour Party in power. I recall that this year was the 70th anniversary. Was there any panel discussion on the legacy of Feliciano Onfray and Emmanuel Christopher O'Black and Edward Oliver LeBlanc and all the other Labour Party greats? Was there a book done? Was there a documentary that spoke to that history? I mean, this is a government with billions of dollars, I might add. And so what we have is a personalization of power, the destruction of the Procurement Act, the destruction of the Finance Act, the biggest project in Dominica's history, the airport, being done without an environmental impact statement. So they are now hollowing out the forest reserve, destroying the rivers, destroying forest cover. For what? I tell people all the time, if they think an airport simply will bring us into the promised land, they need to think again. Congo has an international airport, several. So does Nigeria. So does Haiti and a lot of other states where poverty rules the land. How many international airports, for instance, does St. Bart's have? And St. Bart's is one of the high-end, high-value tourist destinations in the world. I've always taken the view that Dominica is a high-end, high-value tourism destination. We cannot compete with the DR or with the Bahamas. We have to find our niche. But we can only do that within a rule of law, democratic construct of the kind that Gonzalez, despite his protestations, was moving away from into a one-man dynasty. I'm happy that he did not support the CBI program, but what he did support in Dominica was the destruction of our democracy. And for that, I'm happy to see that he's left, because what he did in supporting the destruction of Dominica's democracy was that he was complicit. You see, he did not have the testicular fortitude to see wrong and call it by its name. He just figured, that was one of my comrades, just like Daniel Ortega and even Maduro. When those persons who really care about democracy and care about being progressive look at the facts of recent history, we must concede it's not been very pretty. When you lose an election in Venezuela, you lose the election, you demit office. If you're going to lose an election, don't bribe and treat people and bring them down by plane load. And invite the RSS, as my friend there in Delaware called, to bulldoze and bludgeon and shoot tear gas and rubber bullets at the citizens of Dominica. That is the kind of thing that Gonzalez supported. So I shed no tears for him. I'm rather sorry that someone of his stature had to go that road, that he stayed too long and he dabbled in the sort of authoritarianism and one-party state orientation that increasingly we see in Dominica, and we must do all we can to reject and to ask for our people who are democratically inclined, who believe in rule of law, understand that this is an education mission. You must go to the schools, my friends. You must join voluntary organizations if they do not exist. Build them. Build up the cooperative movement again. Build up the farmers union again. Build up the Dominica Federation of Students again. At the end of the day, young people in Dominica, it is not enough to do dope, jump up and down for 3 nights and call it a Creole festival when there's no Creole industry. There's no Creole publishing company. There are no Creole documentaries. All you have is a hangover and laughs in your eyes because you've been up for 3 nights with discordant noises passing as music and as culture. We need to make a change and become people who are committed to sober effort, industry, and integrity, and jump up and bacchanalian and blowing a horn with a red shirt and a red horn with a red hat. It's not going to do it for us. So I thank all of you for taking the time to encourage our people to be more civic-minded, and for encouraging all of our persons on Dominican overseas to join together and to join organization and volunteer your time to help save our country. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gabe. Take care. Now, Ambassador Gregor, based on what the words that Gabriel Christian just uttered, and based again on everything that has been said before by Irving, by Alvin, by yourself, where do you see the situation is now? What lessons should Dominica learn from that St. Vincent situation? What lessons, for example, should the opposition learn from the way the opposition galvanized itself in St. Vincent to form the new government? Where do you think the opposition forces stand today, and what do you think they should do to put themselves on track to form a government at the next election?
Right. Well, Mr. G, great question. I would say that one lesson to learn from the St. Vincent opposition framework and preparation for power was how, on top of all the issues that they were, the opposition in St. Vincent was totally on top of an alternative agenda, and they were able to work very, very skillfully to winning the hearts and minds of the St. Vincent people. And I think that that is one thing that has not yet happened in Dominica, in the sense that the main opposition party, which has strong support. The UWP in Dominica has never been a weak party in terms of support. What sort of has been the challenge for the UWP in Dominica is that it has
You're muted, Crispin.
You went on mute, Crispin. You mute.
Unmute your mic.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. What I was saying is that the United Workers' Party, having been in opposition for 25 years, has found it somewhat difficult to break the stranglehold of the alliance or the coalition that was formed by the Dominica Labour Party and the Dominica Freedom Party in 2000. And, I was a co-manager of that 2000 campaign for the Labour Party with Atherton Martin. And I know intimately a lot of things that most people don't know. And had the Freedom Party not stayed in a coalition with Labour Party, we would have already have a change of government. And that is where the UWP's challenge lies, in that while it has the opposition forces, because that, there is a wing of the Dominica Freedom Party that pulled away from that coalition. That is why you have people like Bernard Ito and Johnson Boston. They don't support what the last president, Charles Savary, supported, and the deals that he made with Prime Minister Skerrit. So we have not reached that point where the Freedom Party support, which is what's keeping the so-called Labour Party in power. Without the Freedom Party support that came to Labour in 2000, the Labour Party would not be in government today. So the challenge that's left to the UWP is two things. There is infighting in the UWP, which raises questions in the wider Dominican electorate mindset that they are not fully prepared for running the country. I don't know how to change that, Mr. G, but I would say that one of the things that the United Workers' Party needs to wrap itself around is that it's not the only dominant force in the opposition. It might have the largest support, but it clearly has not been able to get the broad support of all the opposition to create a new political dispensation in Dominica. Now, I would say that we are not that far from that. The Dominican people want a change of government. I feel it. I'm here in Dominica at the moment, and everybody who meets me, whether they're UWP, Freedom, or Labor, they all are saying the same thing to me. They are not happy with the direction that Dominica has taken, especially from 2010. So for the last 15 years, people are not happy, and people are seeing their standard of living declining. You just have to go to the supermarket and see what $100 can buy for you. You have to start thinking about what is the future of your children under a government that has been in power for 25 years and cannot do some basic things like collect the garbage. I mean, when a government cannot collect the garbage, that government should resign. And I'm asking one question to the government. Where did all the money for the environmental levy go? That you could not see that you needed trucks to transport the garbage, and that you are still transporting organic garbage from the villages to the landfill by the prisons? Why? That's fertilizer. Why are you dumping fertilizer into the landfill? And why have you not begin to train your young people that there are not that many office jobs for them? That what you want is a new education curriculum, a new education system in a country after almost 50 years of independence is still continuing the curriculum that the British left behind. A curriculum where civics is non-existent. A curriculum where it's not teaching people entrepreneurship. A curriculum that is not teaching people new mathematics and science and engineering and mathematics. This is where our country needs to be headed. And I would say, where the government has allowed CBI to become the driver of development. But here's the saddest part, ladies and gentlemen listening to me tonight. And that is, the government has allowed these passport agents who are selling our passports, raising a lot of money, but the government itself is not seeing the money because they have allowed some of these passport agents to be developers of hotels, right? And they think, the government has this wrong notion that hotels will solve Dominica's problem. Well, ask them about the Kempinski, now called the Intercontinental Hotel. What is their occupancy rate? Ask the Prime Minister that question. And I'm saying that to the media. You ask the Prime Minister, what is the occupancy rate of the Intercontinental Hotel? And you ask the government, how many passports were sold to build the Kempinski? So really, there's a serious financial accountability problem in Dominica with the CBI. And some people have the audacity to say, if not CBI, tell me what? Mr. G, have you heard that before?
Yes, I've heard some people say that. If not CBI, then what?
Well, I have something to tell him what? Water. water alone, exports of water will replace the CBI. And any future government that lets that amount of water go to the sea. Do you know how much water goes to the sea daily? Fresh water, which is one of the scarcest resources on this planet, where only 3% of water on earth is fresh water, and Dominica is in that 3%, but we are not earning any income from water exports. And the world needs that water. We let 1 billion gallons of water go to the sea daily. I was in Western Sahara last year, and Mr. G, they tell me it only rains once in a year. Only once. And when I tell them we get rain every day of the year, they can't believe. They said, send us some of that water, please. And we have water wasting in this country. And you want to tell me, if not CBI, what? Whoever said that, I am sorry for you. Really sorry for you. And Mr. G, I wanted to say a few things about St. Vincent, just very quickly, because, you know, Comrade Ralph Gonsalves is somebody I still have good respect for him, even though he lost the election. That's his fault. My problem with the former prime minister is that he allowed himself to be dumped onto the trash heap of history by not retiring before this election. There is no reason why Comrade Ralph Gonsalves should be kicked out of office after serving for 25 years and not retiring at almost 80 years old. I'm saddened by Ralph's reality. And because Ralph did some good things for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he built the Argyle International Airport. St. Vincent is the smallest country in the world to ever serve on the UN Security Council. St. Vincent has a thriving agriculture under Ralph Gonsalves. St. Vincent played a leadership role in the climate change agenda, calling for 1.5 degrees to stay alive so that the Caribbean doesn't burn under the wrath of climate change. St. Vincent started exploration for geothermal. They followed Dominica, and I had a big hand in that, encouraging Comrade Ralph Gonsalves to explore for geothermal energy, and to also join IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, and got soft loan from them long before Dominica joined. I wanted Dominica to be a founding member of the International Renewable Energy Agency, but Dominica was not interested in that. They didn't understand the significance of that. And then, you know, Comrade Ralph, he said no CBI, which I totally support. And he was supportive of that Africa Union CARICOM partnership. There's one thing he did which I didn't like, and I'm going to state it, is that he was the last of the OECS countries to fall for the Morocco onslaught in the Caribbean, which was to divide the CARICOM in two, those that support Morocco and its occupation of Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa, and those who don't support. And the OECS countries, the 6 OECS countries, led by Dominica, unfortunately, who was the second country in the CARICOM to recognize the liberation struggle of Western Sahara under Prime Minister Oliver Serafin, and for which the Algerian government was willing to compensate Dominica for that support. And Ralph Gonsalves turned his back on the liberation struggle in Western Sahara and supported the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara. That I could never support. So I just want to put those things on the table. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, Alvin, I want to pose the same question to you. Looking at the situation now, I mean, based on the lessons learned from St. Vincent, the way they organize, the opposition organized itself, when you look at Dominica's situation now with the opposition, what does the opposition need to do to put its house in order to it become a unified force to deal with the regime in office now for the past 25 years? You need to unmute your mic.
Yeah. Let me say, Mr. G, in response to that question, a couple of things. One, I think the citizens, like what took place in St. Vincent, learn to respect and throw their support to their political leaders, whether it's the NDP or the ULP. Godwin Friday stayed in opposition for almost 25 years. Okay? 25 years. Not as the leader of the party, but his party had been in opposition for that time. And the people never relented. So that's the first lesson. When you have your political leader, rally around your political leader. Because as I stated earlier, the election, no matter how entrenched someone is, democracy always reigns. The second thing I will say is that, and just piggybacking on what Gabe said earlier, when you're given lemon, you make lemonade with it. I had a conversation with two persons in St. Vincent, a young lady by the name of Adriana King, and one of the guys who won their seat for the NDP. And both of them confirmed and admitted to me the extent to which young people got involved in the process. You hear me? Young people. And there are a lot of times, and Gabe will talk about going to the schools and talking to these young people and that stuff. There are a lot of times we're quick to give up on these young people. The 60% of CARICOM population is under 30 years. 60%. Okay? That means roughly out of the population of around 16 million, that means roughly 9.6 million are young people in the region. 8.9 million of that is between the age of 15 and 29. Why am I saying that? Because they were the ones that drive that change that took place in St. Vincent. So the opposition in Dominica have to learn how to communicate with young people. You know what the young lady told me to in St. Vincent? The use of social media. She said there was a polling station where one of Ralph's supporters went there and he got into some fracas with the polling people and he threw himself on the ground, giving the impression that it's the NDP supporters or people who created that situation. And they quickly took to social media. And within a few minutes, social media blew up, showing the guy, the one is the culprit and not what he's trying to convey. I'm saying all of this to say that the environment, though the political environment may be slightly different, but we have a lot of young people in Dominica too. We have social media at our disposal. So we have to use what we have, Mr. G. We have to use what we have rather than how should I say, criticizing the young people. Try to motivate and uplift them more. Get them involved in the process. On the 15 days before the elections, the St. Vincent Public Service Union formally endorsed the NDP. They issued what is called an MOU. And why did they do that? Because like we say, Ralph became a dictator. During the COVID, there were police officers who refused to take the vaccine and civil servants. And all of them were fired, lost all their benefits. The matter was just, I think it's on the 25th of last month, November. It has just been sent over to the Privy Council. They won at the High Court. The union and as a matter of fact, Cara Shillingford was the attorney, one of the attorneys on that case. They won at the High Court. Ralph appealed to the Court of Appeal. Court of Appeal overturned the High Court, and they have now presented it to the Privy Council. So people stayed engaged. They stayed involved. It's not a one-shot thing. It's not something you do today, you don't do tomorrow. You have to be consistent. You have to be consistent at it. You can't give up. You know, and I'm making an appeal tonight to the opposition in general to not how should I say it? To not shortchange the young people, because they're the ones that are going to determine the outcome, and they're going to play a major part in determining the outcome of an election in Dominica, just as it happened in St. Vincent.
True, very true. Lambi, did you want to take a call? Do you have a call?
Please go ahead, caller. Caller, are you still there? I think the caller has moved away.
Oh, so we lost the call. Dr. Andre, I wanted to give you an opportunity to make a comment on the same question that I posed. Lambi, you want to take the call now?
Yes. Caller, please go ahead. Caller, please go ahead with your call.
All right, so the caller is not ready. Dr. Andre, there's the same question I posed to Crispin and to Alvin. Looking at the situation now in Dominica, what does the opposition, and the opposition, I mean all the opposition forces, including the people and all that. Lambi, your mic is open. So what is it that the opposition needs to do to put the house in order to become a force to be reckoned with at the next general election?
That's a pretty simple question. And in ordinary times, it's a pretty simple answer. The fact of the matter is, the opposition forces have to have a sense as to what is their ultimate goal. What is the ultimate goal? Is it to rescue Dominica? Is it to change this trajectory? Because Dominica will end up, well, in no man's land if we continue on this path, because the wealth of Dominica is being frittered away on mansions, needless hotels, expensive vehicles, accounts in Dubai, under the table handouts, kickbacks. Dominica's wealth is like having a pipe, a drain pipe, open, day in, day out. Day in, day out. So the forces have to ask themselves, what are we doing? What is our goal? What are we trying to achieve? Change the trajectory of this history. And the only way we can do it is through unity. It is not for me to opine who is to be the leader or leaders. Every individual has to be a leader. Every individual has to be united by one goal: to cast aside all selfishness or pretension, to cast aside all hypocrisy, to cast aside all the scheming and backbiting, if that exists, and to come humbly to the altar where everyone can hold hands and break bread in unity, to give hope to those Dominicans both at home and abroad, to give them hope that this land could still be rescued. That tap, that faucet could be shut. That water that is streaming out, whether it's 3 billion, as Crispin says, or otherwise, that drain on the resources of the state is turned off. Unless that is done, then there's no hope. What more examples do you need? In St. Vincent, the opposition parties came together. In St. Kitts, when they defeated Denzel years ago, they formed a team unity. Obviously disintegrated in later years. But they realized that the only way to defeat an incumbent who is acting like they're the king of the realm is to join forces together. Pool the limited resources that you have, whether it's the skill level, whether it's the oratory of your leaders, whether it's the realization that every penny counts, whether it's coming together to have some grassroots fundraising initiatives that will also bind us together in that famous religious song. Whether it's a realization that by the sweat of your brow thou shalt eat bread rather than waiting for somebody in a white horse to give you a big fat check. Making people realize that there is power, wonder-making power within themselves. A rebirth is what required. A rebirth to give people hope. And if there's a perception that somehow the opposition is fragmented, there's no hope. People will start questioning themselves. One speaker who always calls your station says he do not want to be in opposition anymore. Who can blame him? If the same thing is happening over and over again. So there's no rocket science in ascertaining what is required. Sometimes you have to give up some of your dreams for the collective good. Because everybody can't be a chief. You have to have an army of supporters. You have to have everybody making their modest contribution.
Yes.
You froze?
Yes, Irvin.
You might have froze, yeah.
It's
And you know the thing about it, Mr. G, young people are watching, you know. When we think they're not watching, they're watching.
Rambi, you want to take a call?
That amount of selflessness does not exist.
Yeah, caller, please go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, let's take a call, Irvin. No?
Very informative and interesting panel. I wanted to call on Dr. Andre and ask if he's willing to make available all the shortcomings that he pointed out on his program that is happening to Dominica. If you'd like to put that in writing and send it down to us on the opposition, to leaders of the opposition for distribution to the public in Dominica. That is very informative information. I think that's encouraging if we can get it in print.
Thank you for the comment, my friend, but I can tell you, not necessarily based on what I've said this evening, but I have sent many written points with respect to some of the issues that I think we have to overcome. It is no secret. I've done so. Whatever contribution I can make, I will. Indeed, I could remain here and mind my own business, as we say metaphorically. But I've said Dominica is too important to let it go to the wayside, to let it go to the big garbage dump at the back of Foncolé, where, according to Crispin, even fertile soil is being dumped, for God's sakes. Huh? Your parrots are being sold, your water is being drained, your fertile soil is being dumped, your passports are being sold. Monies that should go into consolidated fund are going into private pockets. And when that is done, you have some owners saying, I own 99.9%. Can you imagine that? Crispin, I know you are a Gregoire. I know you are a dashing farmer. You grow your dashing, you sell it. The money is yours. But since when have you owned the Dominican passports? Since when? What gives you the right to claim ownership of the net proceeds of sale of state assets? Where else is that happening? In Antigua? In St. Kitts? Not even in St. Vincent? You think it will happen in Barbados or Trinidad? No. That cannot be allowed to continue. That pipe has to be closed. You know, sometimes you go up that hill when you're going to the airport, and Sylvania, there's a pipe that's always open, water draining, as if there's no tomorrow. And nobody in environmental, whatever they call themselves, or the WASCO or whoever, could get some means to harness that water, to conserve it. No thought to that at all. Let it drain. Let it be wasted. Let us be satisfied with our 2% increase. Let pensioners stay in their homes. They cannot afford to even have a decent meal every day because the social security is so low. And you're paying $65,000 of your money to support a lifestyle. And to hear some leaders talk about their little Sayukadi, their little snipers, is not that what they say? They have their own snipers. And we're talking about developing the youth. And we are boasting about our little snipers. And we're telling the police, bring back the red bench. And you pass in every village and every young person, not everyone, most of them have a little thing in their mouth. Sitting down, the state's resources are being drained, just like the natural resources. The human and the natural resources are being drained. How can you develop a country in that way? Are we not men? What about those brave, intelligent, talented persons we've produced in our own history? Are we not inspired by that? By the bellows? By the CMOS? By the refresh soap? By examples of Dominican's industry? By Bay Oil? By BB Rum? Somebody told me it means bottom brain, but I'm really not sure, to be honest with you. What about those creative juices that we have? Should we allow them to go to the drain, which is what's happening now? So where is that unity that we need at this precipitous time? Where is it? Now is the time to cast aside all these petty differences and realize that we have one vision. We have one goal. There's one entity we are fighting for. We're not fighting to go to Mars. We're not fighting to find out who is the first person to go on the plane and take off. We are fighting to see if we can offer hope to those most in need. And we should not acquiesce to a daily betrayal of that hope by having that continuous infighting. It is not meant for me to decide who is the leader, who is not. What we need is visionary leadership to bring all the entities together on the one roof. It can be done in St. Kitts. It was done. It was done in Goasgon.
It looks like Irving is freezing up a little bit. So let me, if I can come to you, Alvin, to just give you
why
closing.
Is it that?
Irvin, you're freezing up, so I was just going to go to Alvin for his closing remarks. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, go to Alvin.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. G. Again, let me just say thank you for the opportunity, and the rest of my panelists here tonight, Crispin, Dr. Andre, and Gabo, who came in earlier, and of course, my good friend there at the console.
Lambi,
my good friend there. But no, Mr. G, I'm just going to, very simple, just end on the note that I started. And I believe that what happened in St. Vincent is a lesson for government who have grown complacent. If we go back in time, we can speak about Eric Gehry in Grenada. We can speak about Vera Bird and Papa Bird and Sunbird in Antigua. I mean, we can go back. We can speak about St. Vincent, where you had Mitchell was there for quite a while, and the opposition was out for 2 terms. Almost 3, 2 terms out. And young people again changed the trajectory of things. In Grenada, I'm telling you, the Prime Minister himself, a young guy, but young people took the charge in their own hands. So I would say to the opposition, there's no need to feel hopeless. There's no need to feel hopeless. I think Irvin put it quite rightly. Visionary leadership. Just got to be visionary leadership and go do the work. And to the electorate, to the people, to the citizens, let them understand that your vote makes a difference. Your vote makes a difference. One of the things that I think the NDP did very well during the election was they had a pretty good strategy of get out to vote. A GOTV, they call it. A GOTV strategy, get out to vote. So your vote makes a difference. We see right now, and this is something I would imagine the opposition should find a way to address aggressively as possible, that for confirmation, there is a high bar to reach to confirm, meaning that you have to have a passport or some Social Security ID or some stuff like that. Now, if the pattern in the past has been one where folks in the diaspora comes in to vote, think about it. Every person in the diaspora that comes in to vote has a passport, because you need a passport to travel. So if you have to come in to confirm from the diaspora, you don't have a problem of a passport, because you need a passport to travel. And then on the local front now, there seems to be a temporary halt of new registration of new voters. How long that halt is going to be for, I don't know. You maybe know better than I do, or Irvin. I guess Irvin has the dates. But there's a halt. So what you find happening is at the local level, the local citizen in Dominica is being shafted on both sides. On one, if he has to go to reconfirm his name, he need a passport, he need all of those stuff, which he has to get. Think of the young man that may have been employed and no longer working. He doesn't have a passport. The young lady, maybe they don't even have a Social Security card as well, because they're not really working, they're not contributing. So there is a challenge there to confirm, but they must not give up. Then on the other hand, the young man or young lady who turns 18 who wants to register to vote, for whatever reason, is not able to register now. I don't know, as I said, when that is going to resume. But you can see right away what's happening there. You can see right away what the play is at hand here. So all I'm saying is that your vote makes a difference. Have a voice, stay engaged. Opposition, don't feel hopeless. Continue pursuing. Dr. Godwin stayed there for almost 25 years. Today is the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And to those who feel that they own the countries or wherever they are, that democracy is never defeated. Democracy is never defeated. So that is what I will end on, Mr. G, and thanks again for the opportunity. And it is my hope that that the people of Dominica will learn a thing or two from what transpired in the region, in what transpired with our fellow brothers and sisters in St. Vincent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alvin. Crispin, your closing remarks? You're right.
Yes, Mr. G. Let me thank you for inviting me to be on this panel, and I want to salute again my fellow panelists. I think that there are many lessons for us in Dominica to learn from the rest of the region. As I said in my presentation, We've seen 7 elections in 6 months, and there are a lot of lessons to learn. The 2 hours that we spent on this show is not enough for us to go into detail about what happened in these 7 countries in terms of the internal dynamics that led to the outcomes of those elections. But in particular, those countries where there were change of governments, where the incumbent lost, I have to say that democracy is alive in our region, and democracy must continue to remain alive. And further, that there is no place for one-party dictatorships in a multi-party country. And the last thing I will say, Mr. G, is that the opposition needs now to make a turnaround to forge that grand coalition. Because what we saw in 2000 was a coalition between the the Labour Party and the Freedom Party. There is no reason why the opposition parties cannot rise to that occasion to a grand coalition, which is the only game in town right now. Anybody who thinks that one party alone can change this government needs to go back and dream again, because that will not work. One party in the opposition cannot by itself unseat this coalition that was formed in 2000. And I specifically want the opposition forces to focus on the youth. Youth who were born 25 years ago have only seen one government. And there are potentially other leaders who can bring Dominica on a different pathway. We've seen this government for 25 years. They've been on a pathway that has not brought full economic, political, and social development. Yes, I would not say that they have done nothing. Yes, they have done things. But fundamentally, if you go back and look at from 2000 to now, ask yourself, am I better off in 2025 than I was in 2000? And then you will know the answer to that better than I do. So I am calling on Dominicans to look at what happened in the neighborhood of the CARICOM community and say to yourself, are those countries making a better decision for their future than what Dominica is making? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Crispin. Dr. Andre, you have the final word. And Lamb, you want to take a call? Let's take a call before you, Dr. Andre.
Yes, we have a late caller. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good night, sir.
Good night.
Mr. Gregor and the panel. I didn't want to disturb all the program because I find it was very educated and I wanted all you to push all the points across. But I think Mr. Gabriel just touched something, if I would right, either Gabriel or Christian. They keep speaking about the youth. Now, I was saying to Mr. Gregor for the longest while, you have to make a time on your radio station to get the young people with the different ideas, because my idea alone cannot make it happen. Your idea alone cannot make it happen. The youths are very important. They have the new skill of AI, the technology on the internet. They knows about it. What I would advise the panelists, the group of men that there, let's say after Sunday afternoon, DJ Shan play his all the goalies for the youth, for the elderly people. It wouldn't be a political program, because I know you don't want politics on Sunday afternoon. But that's when the people home, that's when the youth home. Let them come up with the different idea, what they want to do in the community. As Mr. Andrew just talked about, our local industry, they are very skillful in manufacturing, AI, and we're going in the AI world today, where they can teach other young people that not so advanced in the technology, right in the community. So I'm begging you, anytime, put the mind together. The guys here, they can raise up funds to sponsor the youth program, and let me bring the idea, because I was listening to Ms. Edwards today from Concord. And if you look at we have the diaspora outside there. We can use their skills. I think you have one guy from Antonio Benz. He sent down an ambulance for the community. I think that's where we're supposed to go. We have a big development happening in Marigot now. I mean, the local people should be involved. You have Mr. Edwards in Wesley and these guys that's very skillful. I think we could put in a crusher in Marigot, even to make blocks locally. We wouldn't be able to go big. And I think that is the idea we need to come up now with. You have the nice areas in Concord, which is fitting for guest houses. You have a few foreigners have guest houses there. And teach the young people to be independent. I mean, Lambert come from Marigot, and Lambert know the independent of Marigot. And Wesley people used to leave all the way from Thibault and come up to Marigot and shop. You know what I mean? So I'm just bringing that idea. Get the young people involved. Hey, get the young people to be involved and get them moving. So if you don't get them involved, we're going to be just doing the same thing I've been telling the government that for the longest while. Yes, they send people to study, but many of the people they send and study, they come back with a different skill. They might be a lawyer or a doctor, but we need skill. Have a good night.
Have a good night yourself, and thank you for that, for the suggestions. We will certainly take that under consideration. So, Dr. Andre, your final word?
Yes, let me again compliment my fellow panelists for their sterling contributions this evening. I think without these voices, these authentic voices, these patriotic voices, hope will dissipate like that water that I have mentioned earlier, flowing without any stoppage somewhere at Sylvania. We have to make an effort to ask ourselves, probably we have somebody or the leaders should give thought to organizing an island tour. Make Dominicans, ordinary Dominicans, visit certain spaces and places and make them appreciate, whether through silent communion or envisioning what's there, that what we stand to lose is precious. Do we want the natural, exuberant landscape, clothed in greenery, go down the wayside like what is happening in Desbordes? Do we want facilities, the so-called developments done without the necessary environmental studies? Do we want our protected lands to be given away for the building of hotels which are slowly sinking into the earth? Do we want a defilement of our natural habitat? Do we want our crabs to be harvested or out of season? Do you want some foreigner to just come and help themselves to your grafted mango at the back of your house? Come see this is Ayo. Is that the Dominica that you envision? Is that the Dominica that you want? Is it a Dominica where you are accorded second-class status? There should be a mass movement for persons on the ground, patriotic Dominicans, to reflect one day, one afternoon, in one spot, with one unity of purpose, to just reflect on what we have and what we stand to lose, and to be invigorated by a realization that we've been blessed. We've been blessed with this natural beauty. We've been blessed by our people who have contributed so much for such a small island. We've been blessed with an abundance of natural resources, and we cannot allow all that to be frittered and thrown away, or go into Dubai or other places where monies disappear mysteriously, according to someone who was in the very belly of the beast when it came to the net proceeds of the passport money. We can say 1 million novenas, but if we're not to present, to put action, if we're not prepared to put our collective energies and talents to help save what we have, then perhaps we don't deserve it. But I know that we do. That's why you're having this program tonight. That's why many persons continue to speak out, despite the fact that they don't get help, despite the fact they get no brown paper bags, despite the fact that leaders are telling their supporters to throw hot water on them when they come to their house, despite the fact that they're denied their benefits, their gratuities, their pensions, their promotions, despite the fact that they're looking at foreigners come to their country and get filthy rich and disappear. We should make all these things embolden our folks to say, no, enough is enough. Well, whatever, however you call Vincent in Pato, I don't know. But we, Nusimun too, we can stand for our island too. It means more to us than it means to you. And we are standing to take hold of what we have, which is so dear, because we deserve to have a decent standard of living. We deserve to have a decent pension or social security. We deserve to have possibilities and opportunities. We deserve to be given resources to build our own industry, to repair our hotels. We deserve not to listen to some fly-by-night developer, hotelier, who come and preach to persons who've been in the business for over 2 decades. We deserve better than that. And we have to stand together and say collectively, we deserve better than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Andre. Well, that's our time. It's just left for me to say thank you to all our panelists, Dr. Andre Crispin Gregoire, Alvin Thomas, Gabriel Christian. Simeon did make so he was otherwise engaged. And so thank you to you folks on YouTube and Facebook who stayed with us all night. And to everybody, have a good night.
Yeah, good night, Mr. G. Hey, Andre.
Okay. All right.
Crispin, Lambi. All right. Take care.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care.
The Global View on Q, the big station. Insights into where the people of Dominica and the Caribbean came from. Understanding our past. Embracing our present. Charting the way forward into our future. Together, eliminating poverty. Embracing justice, peace, and